They tell us the Emperor protects. But in the hive shadows, no one believes that anymore. The air tastes of ash and oil. The walls hum with prayers carved in rust. Every dawn begins with sirens. Every night ends with executions. We live beneath his golden gaze, yet see only darkness. Children are taught to kneel before they learn to walk. Mothers whisper litanies instead of lullabies. And when the Arbites come, even the faithful hide their faces. This is the price of survival in the Imperium of Man: obedience without question, faith without hope, life without mercy. Because here, under the Emperor's rule, you are not a citizen. You are property, and property does not dream. They tell us that faith is the light of mankind, that devotion to the Emperor is the only thing that separates us from the heretic, the mutant, and the beast. But in the shadowed depths of the hive, faith is not light, it is the chain that binds us. Here, beneath miles of rusted metal and choking fumes, faith is survival. We pray not because we believe, but because we must. Every whisper to the Emperor is an act of fear, not love. The sermons that thunder through the Vox speakers are not meant to save us. They are meant to remind us of our place. Every hour, a preacher stands in the square, shouting litanies of purity as the crowd kneels on blood-stained cobblestones. Behind him, the Arbites watch, faceless, armored, unmoving. They do not pray. They do not weep. They only listen for hesitation. 1 second too long before you bow. 1 word too soft when you answer. And you vanish. Faith in the Imperium is not a comfort. It is a weapon. They wield it like a blade against our throats, sharp, invisible, and blessed by holy decree. The priests call it devotion, but we know the truth. It is control dressed in gold. The Emperor's image towers above us, cast in stone and shadow. A reminder that even gods demand obedience. The banners flutter high above, crimson and tattered, whispering hymns of loyalty as the wind carries the stench of burnt incense and machine oil. The great cathedrals glow with sacred light, their stained glass windows bleeding color onto the broken streets. From a distance, it almost looks holy. But if you step closer, you can see the cracks. You can see the grime, the decay. The faces of the forgotten, kneeling, starving, praying for forgiveness they'll never receive. Children learn the words of the creed before they learn to speak their own names. They are taught to fear the alien, the witch, the heretic, but above all, to fear failure. Their lullabies are promises of judgment, their games mock executions. They grow up believing the Emperor watches them always, and that his silence means disappointment. Mothers whisper prayers not for salvation, but for mercy, that their children might live another day in the factories, that their husbands might not be taken for questioning. When someone disappears, no one speaks their name. It is safer to pretend they never existed. In this world, faith is everywhere, carved into walls, etched onto skin, burned into memory. And yet, not one soul truly feels it. Not anymore. The fire of belief died long ago, smothered beneath centuries of fear and oppression. What remains is ritual, mechanical, hollow, unending. We kneel because we are watched. We pray because we are ordered to. We obey because to disobey is to vanish. There are those who say the Emperor sees all. Perhaps he does. But if so, then his gaze must be terrible, for it falls upon a realm of endless misery. Every scream, every whipping, every forced confession, all done in his name. The priests say it pleases him. The Arbites say it purifies the soul. But standing in the gutter, watching the blood mix with oil and ash, it's hard to believe in purity. There are no miracles here. Only orders. Only decrees. And so the cycle continues, day after day, generation after generation. Faith keeps the machines running, keeps the workers kneeling, keeps the Emperor's name alive in a world that has forgotten what mercy feels like. To the Imperium, this is glory. To us, it is survival. And yet, sometimes, late at night, when the smog clears just enough to glimpse the faint glow of the spires above, you wonder if anyone up there still believes. If the nobles and priests, wrapped in gold and guarded by devotion, ever doubt the words they command us to speak. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. It doesn't matter. Because belief has nothing to do with truth anymore, only with control. In the Imperium of Man, oppression wears the mask of holiness. The chains are gilded. The suffering is sanctified. And the lie is so ancient, so vast, that even those who enforce it have forgotten where it began. So we keep praying. We keep kneeling. We keep whispering the same words into the void. The Emperor protects. But deep down, in the silence between each breath, we know the truth. The Emperor does not protect. He endures. And so must we, broken, trembling, and faithful. Until the day even faith forgets our names. Down here beneath the endless towers of steel and smoke, there is no sun. Only the faint orange glow of furnaces, burning without pause, without mercy. They call it the hive. An eternal monument to mankind's endurance, they say. A cathedral of progress and faith. But for those who live in its shadow, it is nothing more than a tomb that never stops breathing. The air itself is poison, thick with ash, oil, and the ghost of machinery. The walls weep with condensation that tastes of iron and rust. The only sound that never dies is the humming of the reactors, echoing through every corridor like a heartbeat too slow to keep the body alive. We are born into the hive. We live, we labor, and we die here, without ever seeing the sky. The spires above us pierce the heavens, stretching toward the Emperor's light, but his light never reaches this far down. It is swallowed by smoke long before it touches the ground. In the upper spires, the nobles feast beneath golden banners, preaching purity while drowning in excess. They speak of duty and devotion, yet have never felt hunger gnaw their bones, nor seen the faces of those who break beneath the gears of their empire. Their prayers are clean. Their hands are not. But down here, below the light, faith has teeth. We wake before the bells toll, dragged from restless sleep by the shriek of sirens and the rumble of shift alarms. The work never ends. It only changes hands. Some are sent to the manufactoria, where the air burns your lungs and the machines grind louder than screams. Others toil in the waste channels, clearing sludge and rot that spills from the upper levels like divine refuse. No one speaks much. Words waste breath. Hope wastes strength. The workers wear masks, but not to protect themselves. They wear them to hide, to become no one. Because when the overseers come, it's safer to be invisible. A name is a curse here. A record, a death sentence. If your output falls short, if your loyalty wavers, if your prayer sounds hollow, you vanish into the processing units or the re-education cells. The hive forgets you quickly. The machines do not. Children run through the cracks between hab blocks, barefoot and silent, scavenging food scraps from the nutrient vats. Their laughter sounds strange, like something unnatural that doesn't belong here. Sometimes they disappear too, taken by the work gangs or the black ships or worse. Their parents don't ask where they've gone. Asking is dangerous. The walls are covered in scripture, some official, some scrawled in blood and despair. The words blend together until you can't tell which are holy and which are cries for help. The Emperor protects is written everywhere, as if repetition alone might make it true, but there is no protection here. Only survival. Every week, the Arbites descend from the upper levels, their boots thundering through the narrow streets. They speak no words. They don't have to. The sound of their march is enough, a warning carved into the bones of every citizen. Doors slam shut. Lights dim. People drop to their knees and pray for the patrol to pass without notice. Sometimes they drag someone away. Sometimes they execute a dozen on the spot. It doesn't matter if they're guilty. Guilt is irrelevant. The Emperor's justice is not about truth. It's about order. And yet, life goes on. It must. The hive doesn't stop. The forges don't sleep. People marry, though love is a forgotten luxury. They have children, not out of joy, but because the factories always need hands. They celebrate the Emperor's feast each year, not with food, but with fasting, punishment, and sermons broadcast across the Vox. Even the fireworks are silent, replaced by the flare of purification fires, burning heretics in the squares. Sometimes, in the quiet hours between shifts, you can hear the hive breathe. The metal groans, the vents hiss, the distant echo of machinery sounds almost like voices. Some say it's the Emperor whispering through the pipes, guiding the faithful. Others say it's the dead, the countless souls who worked themselves to death, still trapped within the walls. Maybe both are true. Maybe neither. No one dares to find out. And yet, amidst the filth and fear, something fragile still clings to life. A mother lighting a candle in secret, praying not for the Emperor's glory, but for her child's safety. An old worker sharing his last ration with a stranger. Two lovers meeting in the dark, whispering names they're forbidden to speak aloud. These small rebellions, quiet, unseen, are the only things that make this place human. The Imperium calls it weakness. But to us, it's all that remains of the soul. And maybe that's the Emperor's truest victory. Not the wars, not the crusades, but the fact that we endure his rule and still call it devotion. Down here, in the bowels of his empire, faith is not a flame. It's the faint, flickering glow of dying machinery, stubborn, faint, and eternal. The hive will outlive us all. In the Imperium, prayer is not a choice. It is a reflex, as natural and as hollow as breathing. Down here, beneath the hive spires, people pray not for salvation, but for survival. The words come automatically, muttered under breaths that tremble with exhaustion. It's not faith that moves their lips, it's terror. Each dawn begins with the litany of obedience. The Vox speakers crackle to life, spilling the voice of some distant priest across the city. His words thunder through every corridor, distorted by static and age. Blessed be the Emperor, for through his will we are given purpose. Everyone kneels. Not one heart feels the blessing, but every soul fears the silence that follows if they don't. Because when the prayers stop, the Arbites come. And when the Arbites come, the prayers turn to screams. There's no beauty in the devotion here, only discipline. Entire families recite the same verses until their tongues bleed, their eyes fixed on the cracked icons nailed to their walls. The same ritual, repeated endlessly, because it's the only shield they have left. Even the children know the words. They speak them before they learn to count. At night, their small voices echo through the hab blocks, repeating the same lines their ancestors whispered 1,000 years ago. Not one of them knows what the words mean. They just know they must never stop saying them. The Emperor protects. The Emperor forgives. The Emperor sees. But down here, in the choking dark, no one feels protected. No one feels forgiven. And the only thing that sees you is the lens of a servo skull, hovering silently in the corner, recording every breath. Faith has become a performance. A mask. The priests say the Emperor listens to every prayer, but we know better. The only ones who listen are the Inquisition, and they do not listen for hope. They listen for heresy. A misplaced word, a hesitation in tone, a sigh that sounds like doubt. And they mark you. When the preachers come to the lower levels, the people bow so low their foreheads scrape the floor. The priests never notice the blood. They only see the obedience, the posture, the trembling hands. They bless the masses with incense thick enough to choke on. And when they leave, the workers cough up black smoke for days. Still, the people keep praying. Not to be heard, but to be ignored. Because in the Imperium, silence from the authorities is the closest thing to a miracle. And yet, sometimes, the prayers take on another tone. Desperate, personal, human. A mother whispers a plea as her child lies sick, begging the emperor to spare him from the plague that seeps through the vents. An old man clutches his worn rosary and mutters for strength, so he can survive one more shift in the forges. A young worker, trapped beneath collapsing steel, prays not for rescue, but for death to come quickly. These are the true prayers of the Imperium. They are not holy. They are broken. They are real. The priests would call them blasphemy if they heard. But here, in the dark, where the Emperor's light cannot reach, truth itself becomes a sin. Some say if you listen closely during the night shift, when the machines quiet and the vents stop howling, you can hear the prayers of the dead, whispers echoing through the pipes. 1,000 voices still reciting the creed long after their bodies were burned. The hive remembers them. The walls absorb their devotion like blood into rust, and perhaps that's why no one dares to stop praying. Because silence feels too much like death. There are stories, forbidden ones, of those who tried to abandon faith. Men who cast away their icons, who spat on the emperor's name, who dared to believe they could live without his blessing. None of them were ever seen again. Some say they were taken by the Inquisition. Others say the hive itself swallowed them, dragging them down into its endless underbelly, where faithless souls are devoured by machines that never stop hungering. So the rest of us keep whispering, keep pretending, keep hoping that if we pray hard enough, long enough, the emperor might look this way, even just once. But deep down, every one of us knows the truth. The emperor does not hear us. He cannot. His throne is a corpse of gold, his will filtered through 1,000 corrupt mouths. Whatever he once was, whatever he once meant, it's long gone. Buried beneath bureaucracy, blood, and time, still we whisper. Still we kneel. Because faith, even false faith, is all that stands between us and the void. And in that way, fear becomes holy. The priests call it devotion. The Arbites call it order. But we, the nameless, the forgotten, the ones who live and die in the dark, we know what it really is. It's survival, dressed in prayer. When the bells toll at midnight and the factories fall silent for just a heartbeat, the whole hive holds its breath. Thousands of voices murmur as one, trembling, desperate, terrified, whispering the same ancient lie that has kept the Imperium alive for millennia. The Emperor protects. And for a moment, just a single fleeting moment, we almost believe it. They say the Emperor sees all, that his golden eyes watch every world, every soul, every heartbeat of his vast decaying empire. That even here, in the lowest reaches of the hive, where light itself forgets to shine, his gaze pierces the dark. But if that is true, then his gaze must be colder than the void, because no warmth ever reaches us. No comfort, no mercy, only the weight of being seen. The statues of the Emperor are everywhere, towering silhouettes of gold and stone, arms outstretched as if an eternal blessing. But stand beneath them long enough, and you'll start to feel something else. Not protection, not love, just the quiet judgment of a God too far away to care. The candles at their feet flicker in the oily air, illuminating the faces of those who kneel. Thousands of them. Their eyes empty, their lips trembling with whispered devotion. They do not look at each other. They look up, always up, toward that cold, unblinking face carved in perfection. You could almost believe he's alive when the light catches the marble just right, when the shadows move across his features, and you swear his eyes shift toward you. But then the power cuts out, and you remember what he really is. A corpse, sitting on a throne that burns the souls of the living to keep him dead and divine. The priests say he loves us all. That every act of faith, every prayer, every drop of blood spilled in his name is seen and cherished. But if that's love, then the word has lost its meaning, because love does not demand silence. Love does not require sacrifice without end. Love does not look upon 1,000,000,000 starving souls and call it holy. The Emperor's gaze is not love. It is judgment, ancient, unyielding, and absolute. And yet, we are told to be grateful. We thank him for the food we don't have, for the air we choke on, for the lives we endure. We are told our suffering is proof of his plan, that every misery is a sign of his favor, that if we endure long enough, we will earn his light in the afterlife. But what if there is no light left to give? The Imperium tells us that the Emperor sits upon the golden throne, guiding mankind through the warp, that without him, humanity would be lost to chaos. Maybe that's true. Maybe he really does see everything. But when you live in the shadows, surrounded by death and decay, it's hard to believe in a God who never looks down. His image stares from every coin, every mural, every propaganda screen, his face eternal, perfect, untouchable. Yet the people who bear his mark rot in the streets. The same hands that raise statues in his name are the ones that dig graves for his faithful. And still, the ecclesiarchy says we are blessed, that to suffer is to serve, that our pain is his will. So we endure it. Because to question is heresy. Sometimes, late at night, the sky above the spires flickers with strange lights, storms in the upper atmosphere, or perhaps the distant shimmer of the Astronomicon. The priests point to it and say, "Behold, the Emperor's gaze upon his children." But to us below, it looks like fire, cold, dying fire, dancing across a sky we'll never touch. The Emperor's gaze does not comfort. It condemns. It does not lift us up. It crushes us beneath the weight of perfection we can never reach. He demands purity from creatures made of dust, loyalty from hearts that only know fear. And yet, we still look to him. We still whisper his name. Because what else is there? Hope has become a kind of madness, a fever passed from parent to child, generation after generation. Even when we know he will not answer, we keep calling. Even when we know he will not save us, we keep begging. Because the alternative, the idea that we are truly alone, is unbearable. Perhaps that is his greatest power. Not his armies, not his angels, but the hold he has on the human soul, the way we cannot stop believing, even when belief becomes poison. No awe, no faith, only distance, the kind of distance that cannot be measured in miles or years, but in silence. Because if he truly sees us, if his gaze really stretches across the stars, then he has watched everything, the wars, the executions, the broken worlds, the children dying in the dust. He has seen it all and done nothing. That is not the gaze of a savior. That is the stare of a God turned to stone. And maybe that's the cruelest truth of all, that we are ruled by the memory of a man who has forgotten what it means to be human. Still, his face watches from every wall, every coin, every broken banner. We cannot escape it. We cannot look away. Because in the Imperium of Man, to turn your eyes from the Emperor is to invite death. So we keep staring back, unworthy, terrified, and small, hoping that one day his gaze will soften. But it never does. It remains cold, distant, eternal, watching us suffer in the name of a God who no longer remembers why. In the Imperium of Man, childhood is not innocence. It is apprenticeship to fear, to obedience, to pain. The first thing a child learns is not love, but silence. From the moment they draw breath in the hive's choking air, their lives already belong to the Emperor. Their names are written into factory rosters, their futures weighed and measured by scribes who have never seen their faces. Some are destined for labor, some for the guard, others for the altar or the pyre. None are destined for freedom. Here, children are not raised, they are assembled. They sleep in stat tab cells, dozens to a room, the light of the lumen strips never dimming. The sound of machines becomes their lullaby, the hiss of the vents their cradle song. Their small hands are perfect for the manufactoria, fitting bolts into places grown men cannot reach, scrubbing reactor ducts, cleaning filters that burn the skin raw. Their laughter when it happens sounds strange, wrong, like a forgotten sound in a world that has no place for joy. Before they can walk, they are taught to kneel. Before they can speak, they are taught the creed. Their first words are not mother or father, but the emperor protects. Every lesson is a sermon. Every mistake, a sin. At 6 years old, they begin labor rotations. At 10, they are initiated into the local chapel. The priests call it purification. The children call it pain. They learn that disobedience is heresy, curiosity is corruption, and compassion, true compassion, is weakness. The lucky ones are taken by the Schola Progenium, molded into perfect instruments of faith and discipline. The unlucky remain here in the rusted depths of the hive, slowly breaking beneath the weight of duty they never chose. It is said that children see the truth clearer than adults. But in the Imperium, truth is forbidden. So they learn to unsee, to forget, to accept the lie as law. The walls of their dormitories are covered with murals of the Emperor's angels, bright, holy warriors with wings of fire and blades of light. The children stare at them in awe, whispering prayers to be chosen, to be noticed. But the angels never come here. The only wings they see belong to carrion birds that nest in the rafters. Every week, the instructors lead them in hymns of loyalty. Their voices rise together, small, trembling, but disciplined. From a distance, it sounds beautiful, holy even. Up close, you can hear the exhaustion, the fear, the quiet resignation that seeps into every note. They do not sing because they believe. They sing because they are watched. And still, there are moments, brief, fragile, when the illusion cracks. When a child dares to dream of something more. To imagine a sky that isn't made of steel. To ask a question that doesn't have a sanctioned answer. Those moments are dangerous. Dreamers do not survive long in the Imperium. Some vanish after night prayers, taken by the black ships or the ecclesiarchy's re-educators. Others are never taken at all. Their spark simply fades, buried under years of obedience. You can see it in their eyes, the hollow glaze of a spirit that has learned to stop asking why. And the world moves on. The factories keep turning. The priests keep preaching. New children keep arriving, born from those who came before, inheriting their parents' fatigue like a sacred relic. Generations blur together until no one remembers when it started, or if it ever could end. Some say this is the Emperor's will, that he demands discipline from birth, purity through service. Others whisper that it is not will, but neglect, that humanity is a machine running on the ghosts of its own children. But no one says it aloud. No one dares. In some of the deeper levels, where the air is thick with smoke and the light never reaches, there's a rumor of a child who refused to kneel, who tore down the icon in the chapel and screamed that the Emperor was dead. They say she was burned alive for it, her ashes mixed into the incense so her rebellion could fuel the prayers of others. And yet, the rumor persists. Perhaps it's a lie, a story told in whispers to remind people that even defiance can exist. Or perhaps it's a memory, one the Imperium hasn't managed to erase. Either way, it spreads. Because every parent, every worker, every weary soul who hears it secretly hopes it's true. That once someone born to servitude dared to say no. But such hopes are dangerous. The priests say hope itself is a sin, that to desire more than duty is to turn your back on the Emperor. So the people hide their hopes, just like they hide their dreams, their doubts, their humanity. And the children keep learning. They learn how to obey without hesitation, how to pray without thought, how to serve without end. They learn that mercy is weakness, empathy is corruption, And death in the Emperor's name is the only true purpose. And by the time they grow up, the rebellion that once flickered behind their eyes is gone, replaced by the same empty stare as everyone else. That is how the Imperium survives. Not through glory or truth or love, but through inheritance. Through generations bred to endure, not to question. Children born to servitude. Children who will never see the stars. Children who will die whispering the same lie their ancestors spoke for 10,000 years. The Emperor protects. When the Arbites walk, the streets forget how to breathe. The air changes, heavier, sharper, like the world itself is afraid to move. Doors close, windows darken, and the city holds its breath. Even the machines seem quieter, their endless clatter subdued beneath the echo of armored boots. You can hear them long before you see them. The rhythmic thud of metal striking stone. The low hum of power mauls charging. The faint hiss of Vox commands pass through cracked speakers. It's a sound every citizen knows, the sound of judgment approaching. They move in perfect formation, black armor gleaming like oil beneath the faint hive lights. Visors blank, faces hidden, symbols of the Emperor's justice carved into their pauldrons. They do not look human, and perhaps they aren't anymore. Whatever mercy they once had has been burned away, replaced with absolute obedience. The Arbites do not question. They do not hesitate. They do not forgive. Their purpose is simple, to remind us that law is not protection, it is punishment. When they march through the lower levels, people scatter like shadows. Mothers drag their children inside, traitors pull their stalls shut, and the faithful drop to their knees, muttering litanies as if the prayers might make them invisible. The Arbites never hurry. They don't need to. The entire hive moves for them. Their arrival never means peace. It means someone has failed. Somewhere, a decree was broken, a prayer was misplaced, a quota missed. It doesn't matter who, guilt is communal here. The sin of one is the punishment of all. And so the Arbites come. Their boots splash through the grime of the streets, past broken shrines and flickering banners. They stop without warning, and the silence deepens, thick, suffocating. One of them speaks, a voice like a machine filtered through a sermon. By decree of the Lex Imperialis, you are found wanting. That is all. No trial, no mercy. Just a verdict, preordained, absolute. The shock mauls flare. The screams rise. And then, as quickly as they began, they fade back into the hum of the hive. Afterward, the Arbites move on, leaving behind silence and the faint stench of ozone. No one dares to approach the bodies. The blood on the floor is a warning, and warnings are sacred here. Children learn early to recognize the sound of Arbites' armor, to freeze, to lower their heads, to become invisible. Even infants fall silent when the patrols pass. It's instinct, inherited through generations of fear. The Arbites do not patrol for protection. They patrol for presence. Their march is a ritual, a reminder that the Emperor's law is eternal, and that his subjects exist only by its tolerance. In some of the upper habs, there are those who call them heroes. They say the Arbites keep order, that they preserve mankind's purity against the rot of chaos and rebellion. But down here, beneath the spires, we know the truth. They are not guardians. They are chains given form. Sometimes they drag prisoners with them, bound in iron, faces bruised, eyes empty. The Arbites never explain their crimes. They don't need to. The spectacle is the message. The Emperor sees, the Emperor judges, the Emperor punishes. And yet, there are whispers. Some say the Arbites themselves are prisoners, bound not by law, but by devotion. That they are raised from birth to see mercy as treason, to feel nothing but duty. That beneath their helmets, their faces are pale and lifeless, drained of all humanity by decades of service to a God who never blinks. Maybe it's true. Maybe they're victims too, shaped by the same machine that crushes us all. But when their boots echo through the streets, no one dares to pity them. Once, Long ago, I saw an Arbeits patrol stop in front of an old woman's stall. She sold candles, tiny things made from scavenged wax, each carved with the Emperor's sigil. The leader of the patrol lifted one, examined it, and crushed it in his gauntlet fist. "Unauthorized iconography," he said. The old woman didn't beg. She just bowed her head as they burned her stall. The flames reflected in her eyes, not anger, not sorrow. Just the quiet acceptance of someone who has seen this too many times before. When the fire died, the Arbeits marched away, their boots leaving black prints in the ash. No one helped her. No one dared. Because in the Imperium, pity can be mistaken for defiance. And defiance is death. When the Arbeits disappear back into the tunnels, life slowly returns. Doors creak open, whispers rise, the hive exhales again. But something lingers, a trembling in the air, a silence in the soul. Everyone pretends not to notice. Everyone pretends it was just another patrol, because pretending is safer than remembering. The Arbeits are the Emperor's will made flesh, unbending, unfeeling, eternal. They do not protect the people. They protect the idea of the Imperium. And in doing so, they destroy everything human left within it. Their patrols will never stop. Their boots will never rest. And long after the last prayer fades and the last city falls, the sound of their march will echo still, through empty streets, through silent worlds, through the bones of an empire that forgot what justice ever meant. The Emperor's law is eternal, they say. But in truth, it's not law that endures. It's fear. There is no night in the manufactorums, only shifts and the illusion of time. The sky above is a lie. No one here has ever seen it. Instead, the ceiling is a cathedral of smoke and metal, a maze of rusted girders and choking fumes. The light never fades, only flickers, pale, artificial, eternal. It burns the eyes and stains the lungs, and still they call it holy. They say the Emperor watches even here. That each hammer strike, each machine's roar, each drop of sweat is an offering in his name. But it feels less like worship and more like punishment, a ritual of exhaustion performed by billions who no longer remember why. The factories breathe like beasts. Pistons throb, gears grind, and vents exhale steam thick with oil and ash. The floor trembles with the heartbeat of industry. And the air tastes like blood and iron. There is no silence, only the ceaseless rhythm of production, the clatter of chains, the drone of machines that never rest. Here, labor is life. And life is measured in quotas. Each worker is a cog, faceless, nameless, replaceable. They wear masks not for protection, but for anonymity. Beneath them, their skin is gray with soot and age. Their hands are burned raw, their eyes dull from years of smoke. They work until they collapse, and when they do, their bodies are dragged aside, replaced by another who will last a little longer. The overseers call it efficiency. The priests call it devotion. The people call it survival. In the higher levels, the sermons play endlessly through vox speakers, distorted voices praising productivity as piety. To work is to worship. To build is to believe. The words echo through the metal corridors, hollow and mechanical, like a prayer recited by a machine that has forgotten the meaning of faith. The workers mouth the words in rhythm with their motions, not out of belief, but because failing to do so might draw attention. And attention here is death. Sometimes the manufactorum halts. Not for rest, there is no rest, but for inspection. A robed tech priest glides through the aisles, his body half machine, half decayed flesh. His eyes glow like dying embers as servoskulls hover around him, recording every movement, every spark, every imperfection. When he passes, the workers bow their heads. None dare to look at him. To see the mechanicus is to glimpse the future that awaits them, the moment when man becomes tool, flesh becomes gear, and prayer becomes code. If a worker falters, the alarms sound. The machine spirits grow angry, or so the priests claim. The punishment is swift: an electric whip, a missing ration, or the silence of the recycling pits. The smell that rises from those pits never fades. Some say the machines remember the dead, that when the engines roar, you can hear the faint cries of those who fell into them. But no one speaks of it aloud. To speak is to stop, and to stop is to die. At shift's end, if such a thing can be called an end, the workers do not go home. They simply move to the dormitoriums, where hundreds sleep stacked in bunks like relics in a shrine. The air there is thicker than the smoke, heavy with sweat, oil, and despair. Some whisper prayers before closing their eyes, though few remember the words anymore. And when they dream of silence, but the factories never allow silence. The walls are covered in sacred sigils, painted in rust and soot, reminders that this suffering has purpose, that every bolt tightened, every gear turned, every bone broken in service of production is another brick in the Emperor's eternal empire. But sometimes, when the power flickers and the lights dim, the illusion fades. The workers glimpse the truth in the dark, that they are not building a future. They are feeding a corpse. Because the Imperium does not live. It consumes, and so the factories keep breathing, even as the people stop. The Emperor protects, the Vox speakers whisper, their voices faint under the grinding of steel. The Emperor provides, but the Emperor does not answer. And in the endless hum of machines, no one notices when another voice goes silent. There are words that can kill you in the Imperium. Hope is one of them. It doesn't matter where you live, the slums beneath the hive, the manufactorum floors, or the prayer halls high above the smog. Hope is treason in every tongue, a whisper that can damn a soul faster than any blasphemy. Because hope implies change, and change is heresy. Here, the people do not dream of better days. They dream of survival, a full ration, a day without punishment, a death that comes quietly. Anything more is dangerous. Anything more is seen as rebellion. The priests call it faith, the idea that despair is divine, that to suffer without question is to serve the Emperor's will. Their sermons echo through the hive spires. Hope is the poison of the weak. Endurance is purity. Submission is salvation. And so the people bow. They bow to the banners, to the statues, to the golden light of a throne they will never see. They bow not because they believe, but because belief is survival. The act of kneeling has become instinct, a reflex passed down through generations like a scar. If someone is caught speaking of change, they vanish. If they talk of peace, they disappear faster. No one asks where they go. Questions are another kind of hope. And hope has no place here. The Arbites call it preventative cleansing. The ecclesiarchy calls it purging the rot. The rest of us just call it what it is, erasure. There used to be songs long ago. Old workers' hymns, sung in the dark between shifts. They weren't defiant, just human. A way to remember that the heart could still feel something beyond the grind of gears and the thunder of sermons. Now those songs are gone. Even humming them is a risk. Some still try, quietly, lips moving without sound, eyes closed as if in prayer. But even silence has ears in the Imperium. The servo skulls drift above, recording everything. The walls are fitted with Vox listeners, their blinking red lenses capturing every murmur, every sigh. The air itself feels like it's listening, watching, waiting. And when someone slips, when a word like someday or freedom escapes in a moment of carelessness, the punishment is swift and merciless. Not just for the one who spoke, but for all who heard. Because hope spreads. And nothing terrifies the Imperium more than contagion of the soul. So the people learn to bury it, to carve their faces into masks of obedience, to hide their yearning behind prayers they no longer mean. They teach their children early that hope is a story for the dead, not the living. That those who reach for the light are burned by it, sometimes in the deep hours of the cycle. When the factory's quiet for maintenance and the smoke thins just enough to see the flicker of distant stars, someone will look up and whisper, almost without meaning to, "Maybe. One day." And the others will freeze. No one breathes. No one dares to answer. Then the moment passes. The noise returns. The stars vanish behind the smog. And the whisper fades like it was never spoken. In the upper hive, the noble priests claim that hope was the sin that broke humanity. That it was hope that led to rebellion, to heresy, to the long wars that scarred the stars. To hope, they say, is to believe that you deserve more than the Emperor has decreed. And that is the seed of damnation. So they preach despair as virtue. They build altars to suffering. And the masses kneel, mistaking fear for faith, endurance for holiness. But deep down, in the cracks of the city, in the ruins where the light doesn't reach, something still stirs. A flicker. A memory. The kind of fragile, dangerous thing that has burned empires before. It's not spoken aloud. It doesn't need to be. It lives in glances, in the way someone shares a crust of bread, or shields another from the overseer's whip. Tiny acts of defiance, hidden beneath ritual obedience. Each one is a whisper the Imperium can never truly silence. They can outlaw the word. They can burn the voices. They can grind the people into dust, and still, something remains. A spark that refuses to die. A shadow that remembers light. Hope is forbidden here. But it is not gone. Because in the endless darkness of the Imperium, even a single forbidden thought can become a star. In the Imperium, loyalty is not a virtue. It's a reflex, born of fear, not faith. They tell us that devotion is everything. That to serve the Emperor is to find purpose, and to obey is to find peace. But peace is a lie told by those who have power and loyalty. Loyalty is simply another name for survival. The weak die. The fearful vanish. The obedient live. That is the only truth anyone remembers. Any more. To live under the Emperor's rule is to learn the art of endurance. Not strength. Not courage, but the quiet, desperate instinct to keep breathing no matter how much it hurts. You work when your hands bleed. You kneel when your knees crack. You smile when the overseer looks your way, because anything less than that smile can mean your name on a report. And once your name is written, it's already gone. The Arbites don't need to prove guilt. The ecclesiarchy doesn't need evidence. The accusation itself is enough. A neighbor's whisper, a missed prayer, a moment's hesitation, all signs of disloyalty. All reasons to vanish. And so people learn to survive by pretending, to speak the right words, to nod at the right moments, to worship with hollow eyes and trembling lips. The Imperium doesn't want truth. It wants obedience that looks like faith. There are no heroes here. Only survivors. Even the priests, those self-proclaimed keepers of purity, are bound by the same invisible chains. They know that to question the dogma is death, not just for them, but for everyone under their watch. So they preach harder, louder, trying to drown their own doubts beneath the sound of their voices. Sometimes, you can see it, the flicker of exhaustion behind their eyes as they chant the same hollow blessings day after day. They are trapped too, prisoners of the very words they wield. In this empire, belief has become a weapon, and everyone is its target. Loyalty is tested not through love of the Emperor, but through endurance of his silence. When the machines fail, when the crops rot, when the plague comes again, there are no answers, no comfort, no divine intervention. The priests simply say, "The Emperor tests your faith," and the people nod. Because what else can they do? To admit doubt would be to invite death. So they rebuild. They burn the sick. They bury the dead. And when the next cycle begins, they thank the Emperor for the strength to suffer again. In the lower hive, there's a saying whispered only when the lights go out: the loyal die fast. The clever die slower. The silent live the longest. It's not wisdom, it's survival. There are families who've lived entire generations under suspicion, where every act is a performance, every prayer a mask. Children learn early to fake their devotion, to cry at sermons, to speak the catechisms with the right tone of trembling reverence. The lie becomes habit. Habit becomes vund, safety. Safety becomes faith, because here, faith isn't belief. It's camouflage. There's no trust among neighbors, no unity among workers. Every eye is a potential informant, every word a potential betrayal. And the administratum likes it that way. Fear makes for better subjects than loyalty ever could. In the hive archives, the records of those accused of disloyalty stretch for kilometers, scrolls written in the blood and ash of entire lineages. The crimes listed are absurd: failure to show proper enthusiasm during morning prayer, inadequate kneeling posture, excessive silence during hymns. Each charge ended the same way: purged for the good of the Imperium. And so people learn. They watch, they mimic, they survive. Because in a world where justice is an illusion and mercy is heresy, endurance becomes the only proof of loyalty that matters. To live another day is the only victory left. Sometimes, when the night shift ends and the air is still thick with smoke, a worker will sit in the dark and whisper to themselves, "I am loyal. I am faithful. I am alive." They don't say it because they believe it. They say it because if they stop, if they forget to pretend, the world will notice and the world will kill them for it. That's the true faith of the Imperium. Not worship, not hope, but survival. To live is to serve. To serve is to suffer. And to suffer is to prove your loyalty. Even as the body breaks, even as the soul withers, the machinery grinds on, fed by those too afraid to stop. The Imperium doesn't care who believes. It only cares who endures. Loyalty here is not a choice. It's the price of breathing. The statues see everything. They always have. They rise from the streets like pillars of judgment, carved from black stone and holy metal, towering high above the hives, their faces frozen in expressions of divine wrath or eternal sorrow. Each one bears the likeness of saints, martyrs, and heroes whose names no one remembers. Their eyes are blank, yet somehow they see more than anyone dares to. The people move beneath, their shadows like insects under the gaze of gods. Every plaza, every corridor, every manufacturing hall has one, a silent watcher looming from the dark, draped in incense smoke and lit by flickering candles that struggle against the smog. The faithful kneel before them, whispering prayers for forgiveness. Though no one knows what sin they've committed this time, the statues never answer. They never move. But they listen. The wind carries the cries of the dying to their stony ears. The dust of the uncounted dead gathers at their feet like offerings. Their surfaces are streaked with soot, their eyes chipped by time. Yet still they stand, unmoved, unbroken. Eternal. They are the faces of the Imperium itself, once perhaps. They were built to inspire hope, symbols of the Emperor's divine mercy and mankind's unyielding strength. But mercy is long forgotten now, and the statues have become something else, reminders of the futility of prayer. Each one looms over a world that's already dying. A God-shaped tombstone for a faith that can no longer save anyone. Sometimes, the Arbites execute heretics at their feet. The statues become backdrops for public purges, their silent eyes reflecting the flames. When the executions are over, the ashes mix with the candle wax, and the faithful scrape it away to anoint themselves, believing that to wear the dust of the condemned is to share in their devotion. They don't see the irony. The statues do. In the lower hive, one stands above the slum markets, a giant figure of the Emperor himself, hands raised in eternal benediction. The traders say it's older than the city itself, that its base is filled with bones from the first generation of settlers. Children play in its shadow, their laughter faint beneath the roar of the city, and the workers bow when they pass, just in case someone is watching. No one remembers who carved it. No one dares to question why it still stands, because the statues are sacred. They are the Imperium-made stone, heavy, cold, and indifferent. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, when the smoke clears just enough for the hive lights to pierce the dark, the statues seem to move. Not literally, but in the way their shadows stretch, crawling over the walls, falling across sleeping workers like hands of judgment. There's a rumor whispered among the laborers that the statues aren't just monuments, but conduits, that the Emperor sees through them, that his will flows through the cracks and veins of the stone, watching, weighing, deciding who lives and who disappears next. And though everyone knows it's just a story, no one says it out loud. Because in the Imperium, even disbelief can be heresy. When the plagues come, and they always come, the priests gather at the feet of the statues, burning incense and chanting for salvation. The smoke coils around the carved faces like a shroud. The sick crawl toward the light of the candles, begging for mercy that never comes. And when they die, the bodies are piled at the base and burned, the smoke rising to stain the marble black. Still, the statues remain unchanged. Their eyes are still fixed on eternity, blind to the suffering they preside over. Or perhaps they are not blind. Perhaps they see too much, and cannot bear to look away. The people believe the statues bring protection, but the only thing they truly bring is silence. Their presence is a command: obey, endure, worship. Even in ruin, they endure longer than flesh, longer than faith. When the walls collapse, the factories crumble, and the prayers fade, the statues remain, watching the empty streets, surrounded by the bones of those who once believed. There's something almost cruel in their permanence. They never weep. They never fall. They simply exist, as if carved from the same indifference that fuels the galaxy itself. Sometimes, when the air is still and the noise of the hive dies down for a heartbeat, you can almost imagine what they're thinking, these great, hollow gods of stone. Maybe they envy the dead. Maybe they're waiting for the day the last human voice fades, so they can finally stop pretending to care. Or maybe, in their own way, they are the Emperor, cold, distant, and eternal, a reflection of a divinity that long ago forgot what mercy meant. They stand as the world rots beneath them. They watch as the people kneel and die. And in their silence, the truth becomes clear. The Imperium does not worship life. It worships endurance. There is a sound in the hive that never stops. Not the hum of machinery, nor the wail of the sirens, but something deeper, older. It's the sound of life itself, billions of voices breathing, whispering, suffering in unison. A constant murmur that fills the air like pressure, heavy and inescapable. The weight of a billion souls, each one born beneath the same steel sky, each one dreaming the same forbidden stream, that maybe, just maybe, their existence could mean something more than servitude. But the Imperium does not deal in dreams. It trades in obedience, and the price is always the same: the self. Every soul is a cog. Every life a calculation. You can feel it in the air, the way the city seems to breathe through them, using their bodies as lungs, their prayers as fuel. The walls sweat with the moisture of their breath. The corridors thrum with the pulse of their footsteps. They are the living infrastructure of the Imperium, not citizens, but resources. When they die, their names fade instantly, consumed by the roar of the next generation that takes their place. No grave markers, no record, no memory. Just another layer of ash in the endless sediment of human endurance. From orbit, their world looks alive. The lights, the motion, the industrial glow that paints the night. But from the ground, you see the truth. It's not light, but the reflection of exhaustion. The glimmer of sweat, the burn of plasma furnaces, the phosphor glow of bodies working themselves to death. No one counts the dead anymore. There's no point. The administratum stopped caring long before the current generation was born. They measure populations the way they measure fuel, in tonnage. To live in the Imperium is to be a number. To die in it is to be erased, and yet the people endure. Somehow, they endure the hunger, the fear, the weight of unending obedience. They endure the sermons that tell them suffering is sacred, that pain is the Emperor's blessing, that to die for his glory is the only freedom left. But beneath all the ritual, beneath all the doctrine, something else festers, a quiet, wordless grief that binds them all. You can see it in the eyes of the workers who never look up, in the priests whose faith has become habit, in the soldiers who pray not for victory but for an end. It's there in the silence that follows every air raid siren, in the way the crowd parts around a corpse without slowing down. It's the collective sorrow of a species that forgot what hope feels like. Sometimes, when the vox channels go quiet and the furnaces dim, that sorrow takes shape not as rebellion, but as a kind of cosmic fatigue, an exhaustion so vast it feels like gravity. You can almost hear the universe sigh, because this is not one world suffering. It's a trillion upon trillion across the stars, all connected, all feeding the same dying God machine that keeps them chained together in misery, on Terra itself. The priests say that every prayer, every cry, every death adds to the Emperor's strength, that he bears the burden of all mankind. But if that's true, then he must be drowning in it. Imagine the weight of all those souls, the unborn, the forgotten, the enslaved, the devout, the damned pressing down upon his throne like an ocean made of sorrow. Maybe that's why he cannot speak anymore. Maybe that's why his light burns instead of comforts. For every prayer that reaches him, 1,000 more are lost in the static of endless despair. And yet, still they pray. Still they kneel. Still they offer the only thing they have left, their pain. The Imperium calls it faith. But it's really something else. It's inertia, a billion souls, too afraid to stop believing. Because to stop would mean acknowledging that no one is listening. They keep moving because to stand still is to vanish. They keep praying because silence feels like death. They keep living, if only to prove they haven't been forgotten, even if they have. And so the hive breathes on. A trillion lungs inhaling despair, exhaling devotion. A machine of flesh and faith, grinding on through eternity. In the end, the weight of 1 billion souls isn't measured in numbers, but in the sound they make together, that endless, low murmur beneath the hymns and engines. It is the sound of a species begging its God to remember it. There comes a moment, somewhere between the sirens and the silence, when even prayer loses its meaning. The words still come, of course. Lips still move, hands still clasp, incense still burns. The rituals continue because they must. Because stopping would be a crime against everything the Imperium has built. But deep within, where the soul hides from doctrine, there is only the echo of an ancient truth. No one is listening. In the lowest hives, the air is so thick with soot that the light of the shrines barely cuts through. The candles flicker and die, one by one, and no one bothers to relight them. A priest recites the same benediction for the 1,000th time, his voice cracked, eyes hollow. He speaks not to the Emperor, but to the silence itself, begging it to speak back. The Vox towers still broadcast hymns, endless and mechanical, voices of the faithful repeating scripture like static. The Emperor protects, they drone. The Emperor provides. Yet the only thing they protect are the walls of the hive. The only thing they provide is a lie that keeps the people from collapsing beneath the weight of truth. Because the truth is this: the Emperor is gone. Not dead. No, death would be mercy. He is something worse, silent, watching, unreachable. They say his body still burns on Terra, encased in golden machinery, sustained by the prayers of 1 trillion souls. But if he truly hears them, why does nothing change? Why do his children starve in the streets while his priests feast in marble cathedrals built from their bones? The faithful call it a test. The broken call it a joke. And the rest, the billions who live their lives between one factory shift and the next, they don't call it anything at all. They simply endure. Because what else can they do? In the shadows of the hive, a mother kneels before a crude icon painted in rust. Her child is sick, dying from the air itself. She whispers every prayer she knows, even the forbidden ones. But there is no answer, only the hiss of machinery and the distant rumble of the furnaces. When her voice finally breaks, she stops speaking and simply listens. For a heartbeat, she thinks she hears something, a whisper. Faint and kind, but it's only the wind through a broken vent. In another world, under another sky, a soldier bleeds out in a trench filled with corpses. His faith was once unshakable, his devotion absolute. But as he stares into the gray horizon, he wonders if the Emperor's light has already moved on, leaving them behind in eternal dusk. His final prayer is not for victory or forgiveness. It's for someone, anyone, to remember he existed, but no one will. Their prayers rise like smoke, billions of thin, wavering threads drifting upward through the smog of dying worlds. They climb past the hive spires, past the choking clouds, into the void where no sound carries and no light returns. They pass the wrecks of ancient fleets, the frozen bodies of the forgotten, the shattered remnants of faith itself, until they are swallowed by the silence between the stars. There, in that endless dark, the prayers unravel. Their words scatter like dust. Their meaning fades. And the void gives nothing back. Perhaps once, long ago, the Emperor heard them. Perhaps his voice thundered across the galaxy, answering the cries of the faithful. But if he still listens, his silence has become indistinguishable from absence. His light has become a memory, and his mercy, a story told to children who will grow up to die in his name. The priests will deny it. The Inquisition will burn you for speaking it. But deep down, every soul in the Imperium knows, the prayers do not ascend. They fall. They sink back into the rot, into the endless cycle of fear and obedience, feeding the same ancient hunger that built the Empire's walls. And yet, they keep praying, because prayer is not hope anymore, it's habit. It's what keeps the human heart from collapsing under its own despair. Even when there is no God to hear them, the people of the Imperium pray to the silence, because silence at least does not lie. But maybe, in that infinite emptiness, the silence is not cruelty. Maybe it's mercy, because if the Emperor truly saw what humanity has become, if he truly heard every scream, every plea, every prayer, perhaps even a God would choose not to answer.